occasion, no, you're not there. And so we need to pool together, we need to work together to find out how we need to help close this achievement gap. Now there's been studies, and we know as parents, our kids are just as smart as anyone else, but why aren't they achieving at that level? Well, there's a number of different reasons. Stereotyping is a huge one. And what does that mean? Well, that means that, you know, when they look on TV, especially our boys, you let me know if I'm wrong, and you know, when you see the advertisement, what is the biggest advertisement for a young man? It's music and it's entertainment. And music is entertainment. So sports entertainment, music entertainment. It's really not the big push of doctors or lawyers or engineers or plumbers or electricians or carpenters. You don't really see that out there. That's not pushed in front. It's how do you make the big money? How do you make the big money? And it's easier to hit the lotto than it is to get in those positions. But nobody tells our young people that. So what a lot of times we do, and what we've done, and we're guilty of it, and because that's what I came, sports kind of got me to get my school paid for, and I'm looking for the next level, but it didn't work out. But luckily, I took care of everything else so I can move into a career and everything went well. And so, because I knew one was connected to the other. You can't get a scholarship if your grades aren't there. Okay, so somebody put that in and said, well, I'm not gonna let that stop. So what happens is that as our young people are filtered into these athletics, because what happens is that after school, go to practice. And we're talking about before high school. So let's say after school, get a sandwich, grab it, let's go to practice. And after practice, if you want to be good, you got to stay after practice to get some extra help to make sure you fine tuning those skills, because you can't do the same as everybody else and expect to be better. So you got to put that extra time in. But what end up suffering is by the time they get out of practice, and especially Little League, by the time they get out of practice and get home, they're tired, and the last thing we put in front of them is homework. And so what message are we sending? We're sending a message that is the least important, and the athletics is the most important. Now I get it. I mean, we love our kids. We want the best for them. We know they need to burn energy. We know teamwork and hard work. We understand the discipline that comes with the athletic piece. But what happens is that over a period of time, it becomes very, very difficult as the work gets tougher and requires more time. Then what happens is a lot of times our athletes or our students, they gravitate more to where they spend most of their time. So what you spend the most of your time is really what you value the most, without saying a word. So what happens is that, and plus society is supporting that. And when society supports that, then it becomes very, very difficult when you're put into a nice district that expects you to operate at a very, very high level. Mm-hmm. And so what happens over that period of time, there's gaps that start. And why? And so what happens, if you are taught to read up until third grade. After third grade, you're expected to apply that reading. And so if in fact, for whatever reason, because one bad teacher can affect the next 2 or 3 years of your child's high school experience. And so one good teacher can help offset that, but you have to have them consistently. And so what happens from a parental standpoint is we have to be the overseers of our students' education, not the teachers. We don't expect you to go back to school and learn how to do algebra or geometry or AP physics. That's not your role. That's not your job. And if that feels like that's your job, then we need to do some things to make sure that those that are responsible for doing that are doing that. And we want to do it in a manner and in a way to where we can connect and we can build a relationship, because we don't want us against them. We don't want this type, because who suffers when that happens? Our child. They suffer. So it becomes a situation of working together. So as time went on, looking at, okay, as this network, what we did, we said, okay, we got to close this achievement gap. How can we do that? Well, we know some type of interventions. We talked about doing incentives. We said, well, tutoring. Tutoring is a good thing. And so what we decided to do is incorporate Saturday school. What does that look like? It looks like us coming in here on a Saturday, having a donation jar. You can donate whatever you want. We're going to take that and we're going to buy snacks. We're going to reach out to Western, and we're going to reach out to whoever else has some student teachers close around, and some National Honor Society students who have to get community service hours, and we're going to ask them to come in here and get their hours. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is that we're going to bring our kids, and we're going to let them get some tutoring. And so we started out that way, and it was a point to where, okay, what's the next level? Well, the next level is that our students coming, but they're bringing what they want to work on. We really don't, the tutors don't know if they have missing assignments or if they're not doing what they should be doing. So if they like math and they're doing math, but they really need help with reading, the tutor don't know, the tutor only knows what they tell them. So what happens is that we had did this for a couple years, and the district said, hey, you know, we like what you're doing, so we're gonna put a halftime employee that can tap into the system. So there was Power School. What system do you have?
Skyward.
Skyward. Okay, so what happens is that now the person can tap into or access Skyward and say, no, you need to do this math. You got a missing assignment in math. So we had some type of connection to get that. But what ended up happening is then the district brought that halftime person onto a full-time person. Then brought a second person. And what happens is that parents were dropping the kids off and leaving. We said, no, let's capture these parents. Let's have a parent university. So what happens is that now we brought in professionals to come in, maybe in psychiatry, and just sit down and talk about parent issues, how we can support our kids. And so what happens is that over a period of time, the district kind of took it, embraced it, and then now if you look on the website, that's their project. That's their huge, big project. And now, guess who utilizes the least?
Us.
Yeah, say that again?
Us.
Us. We put it together and did it for tutoring, but if you go in there and look, the high achievers are taking advantage of that.
That's right.
And so what happened with that? You know, what happened? And so, but it's still, you know, it's still there and it's still accessible. The district, after all these years, went on the first HBCU tour, Black College tour. And that was huge, been working for that for a while. That was huge. What we found, and we need to do some deep briefing, what we found is when our students went there, they really didn't know what they wanted to do for the next level. And that's because of exposure. Our kids, like for myself, when I was growing up, I knew my coach, what my mom did, and that was it. So I didn't know a wealth of other people in different careers, and because I didn't know that, I didn't have a lot to choose from. So I kind of funneled off what somebody told me or what I thought. And so exposing our kids to different career choices is huge because I've talked to students. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with a young lady, Caucasian young lady. And I said, hey, well, you know what you want to do for it? Oh yeah, I want to go and I want to be a PA. I don't want to go to school for 8 years. I only want to go for 6, 4, that. I'm going to go to Michigan State. And I said, well, you know, how do you know you want to do all this? Well, my sister, she's doing it, and she thinks that was a good idea, so I'm on track to do that. And I believed it. And she knew exactly what she wanted to do. But a lot of time when you ask our kids, they really don't know. And we have to help with that. And what I mean by we have to help with that, our schools have career centers in them that help connect careers. They also have tests that can take, what do you like to do, and kind of connect that. And all those things are available, and it helps. Exposing them to college campus gets them excited, but it becomes a situation of kind of helping gearing them towards that, okay? And so that's been over a course of time. We did student incentives and tutoring and things like that. So what happens is that everything that we did was moving towards helping to help our students become successful. And we've also had a student voice, a panel, and I'm going to recommend that for future times as we bring our students, because we want to help our students, but we're really from the outside looking in. And we may have conversation with them at home, but to have our students here and say, hey, ask them some questions, or we can have a moderator come in, I can assist you with that, whatever you need, and ask them some questions so they can share. We've done some things on expectations. What are your expectations for your kids? What do you expect them to do in the educational environment? What are your expectations for the teachers? What is your expectation for other parents?
Mm-hmm.
And then we ask the students the same thing. What is the expectations of other students? Students, what are the expectations of your parents? And what are the expectations of the teachers?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a forum to where we were able to ask some teachers the same thing. What are the expectations of the parents of your students? What are the expectations of your students? And when you looked at it, all of it pretty much matched up. Everyone had pretty much the same expectations. Wanted the students to come and get an education and to thrive in that environment and to do well. And so what I want to do is I want to assist you in helping you move forward and hopefully shorten the learning curve so we don't run into, make some mistakes that's been made in the past. And so, what I like to do is I like to really talk openly about what do you see the mission for this group is, because I can't identify that mission for you. You have to identify. Now, we can look at this in a number of different ways. This can be a network that covers a district, so this can be a district network. You can have a elementary, you can have a middle, you can have a high school, because they have different concerns and different needs at the different levels. However, we have to look at, how do we want to run this? How do we want this to be? Do we want it to be a district? And what happens is that the meetings we report out, elementary issues and concerns and things that we're doing, middle school and high school, and that's something we'll discuss. Now, starting out, it may be best for us to work together, to just kind of get a framework together. But what it's really going to take, and one thing about elementary parents are pretty heavily involved. And it seems the older your kids get, the more you back off. And that's because I know they want their space. But I'm here to tell you, they need you.
Mm-hmm.
They need you. Just as much as they did in elementary, it's just different. And what we have to do as educators in our schools is to make it welcoming for you to come in and know what to do, because it's like, okay, what can I do? We're not doing field trips anymore. And, when it's not bake sales or things like that. But you have to be involved. So we want to encourage your child to be involved with something, and you're involved with that. Boosters, it can be any type. It can be helping out with the National Honor Society, it can help them with the Glee Club or the Recycling Club. There's just robotics club. There's a whole lot of things that we can help out, but we definitely want to be involved with that. So I just want to make sure that we don't back off just because our students say, no, I'm good, just wait for me out there. Okay. So in reference to our mission, what do you want? And what I mean by that, and I like to have an open dialogue on what do you, because there's an academic piece of school and there's a social piece. And that social piece is huge, and we're living it. That social piece is huge because that gets in the way of the academics. So even if your child is striving or thriving academically, they still may be struggling socially. And that social piece can eventually affect the academics. And if your child is doing well and they're off by themselves, that gets old.
Yep.
And with being off by yourself, a lot of times you get flack for that. You get flack for that. And what I mean by get flack for that, if you get good grades and let's say our other young brothers and sisters aren't, then sometimes they may call you, you're acting wide, or who you
Sell
think
out.
you are, or you think you're too good, and so now as a student, what do? Do I kind of drop my grades a little bit so I can fit in, because I gotta get along with these. I know my parents are telling me that you need to do this. You don't need any friends. It doesn't matter. All you need to do is worry about your schooling.
Did we say that, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. And in theory, that's good. That's like asking you to go to work and don't speak to anyone ever. Just walk in there, do your job, leave. Now, you may do that, but for those if you're doing what you enjoy doing in your life at this point, you would never do that. You would never imagine going to a place and never speaking, because that's what kind of makes you feel good. It's having positive relationships and people appreciating you for what you do and how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go in and you never get praised and you never get complimented and you just go in, then you feel like, hey, why am I here? I'm not making a difference. And so students feel that same way. So to ask them to ignore all that's going on is unfair to them, because high school is supposed to be one of the best experiences of their life. I know I had a great time. And for those that had a great time, it's like, we were normally involved, and we normally didn't take much stuff. And what I mean by that is that, you ain't gonna have any stuff, and you're not gonna let anybody else get taken advantage of, because it just wasn't right. So, what are you looking for in this group? And I need input. And like I said, I'm speaking a lot on the front end, but that's just to kind of get us going. But I need input. I need input on why are you here today? Why are you here right now? I'm here because I enjoy kids. I enjoy kids being successful. I enjoy supporting parents to help their kids become successful. I just enjoy that. So that's why I do this. I enjoy it. Because I know how much somebody has helped me in the past, and I know for those that didn't get the help what happened. And so I'm here because I want to be and because I want to help you become successful or help you guide through this. I understand we got some things going on, but trust me, you're not alone. You are not alone. And through that experience, we've had situations to where we had stuff wrote on the wall, we had threats of things going on, you know. We had a situation to where somebody had wrote on the wall a date in the N-word. And next day, police there, you know, dogs going around, and this is before all of the shootings and all this. And at the end of the day, you know, and hadn't seen that many black families at all. You know, they're like, hey, Jamie, can you, because I was over the network, hey, can you come and facilitate, come in? It's like, wow, I didn't even know that many black families in the whole school. Like, wow. And they're like, we want their head, we want to get them and kick them out of school, never to be seen again. When the dust settles, did you know it was an African-American young man that wrote that? And that's exact, so it's like, okay, do we still string them up and do we crucify them? Do we still do the same thing, or is there a pause? And the district was very, very gracious to just kind of let it slowly take care of it, but slowly fade away to where that person was able to maintain a level of dignity. But it was a point to where we just can't assume that all these things happen. Now, why would a person do that? There's some things going on. And come to find out, there was some things going on. And so, if in fact, we don't have the support of a network like that young man, you know, so why did they graciously handle it? Could have been a number of different reasons. But I know having parents working on one accord made a huge, huge difference as opposed to just one parent dealing with that situation. And so that's, you know, numbers make a big, now, numbers have made a big difference. Birmingham just, after all these years, created a diversity position. And that's huge, huge. Because what that does is the district is saying, hey, you know, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. This is what I'm willing to do to kind of help. But once again, that's because of sitting at the table, 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 inviting people to the table, inviting people at the table, having a conversation, and this thing just kept growing and growing and growing to where now there's major changes being made. And so when something happens, we're invited to that table. But I'm going to tell you what the biggest issue is turnover. Because when your 10th grader leaves, you're out of here. And what goes with you? History. And so what ends up happening is we end up redoing things over and over and over again and spinning our wheels. And it's like, we can't do that. So that was part of my purpose of hanging around. Because if my kid's been in high school for 15 years, we got a problem. So that's why I've been around. It's just to make sure we don't lose history. And that's why I'm here now, is to share the history of what's happened already so we can move forward. And we can move forward at a fast pace because we don't have 15 years to get to that next level. And so that's why we need to work together. We need to take this and make this movement work. So, I'll stop talking for a few seconds. Why are you here? Don't look around. Don't look around. Speak up. Yes, ma'am.
I'll start. I'm here because there are conversations that need to be had at the school that my child cannot do for herself. I'm trying to let her be that young adult, but they don't always get the respect that they need when they're trying to get stuff accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
I can go next.
Yes.
I am here as a parent that has a child with disabilities. There's a disconnect.
Okay.
Not with everyone, but between what he can do, what they know he can't do. It's just, and when you have that disconnect and trying to voice it, it can be very difficult because then your child's already labeled.
Absolutely.
So there's just an issue there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, well, come on, folks, while you're here, talk to me.
I'll speak for myself. I'll let my husband speak for himself. But I'm an educator in the area, so I come as both an educator as well as a parent. And my son is obviously here at this high school, and I have a passion for kids. It's what I do, it's what I've always done, and so if we can work together to improve the well-being for all students, educational success, then that's what I'm here to do.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you, and we appreciate that. Whenever you got an educator amongst your midst, that's huge. Because what happens is that I'm fortunate to be able to see both sides. So for example, we can tell you how it's supposed to look, and we can tell you if something's not quite right. It's just a point of how we go about it and fix it. Okay?
Well, so just to clarify, I am an educator by way of being a social worker. So I'm a master social worker in education, and that's been my history for the past 25 years. So I am an educator, but I'm also a social worker in education.
So that social worker piece, that social piece is huge. It is huge. We appreciate that. And what happens is that you're allowed to give us some insight. Absolutely. Anyone else?
So I would say for me, like, I feel like I have a similar background.
Okay.
Like, because I have the privilege of being able to, I teach at college level.
Okay.
But I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. But I also have 2 children. I have a girl child and a boy child, so they have completely different needs and at different stages. And I think for me, what I'm always coming back to is access to opportunities and access to different things that I feel like part of what I've been hearing and also seeing that not everybody gets the same information. And so how can we leverage our status in this organization as to have a seat at the table for that, but also kind of going back to what you talked about, how basically you're taught how to read until 3rd grade, and knowing that we're really about to be hit with a bunch of 3rd graders who may not be able to move on to the 4th grade because of a ridiculous law that legislatures passed that to make kids who are not passing the test, where a test that hasn't passed, nobody really has passed this test, is ridiculous, and how it could impact, a child of mine who is in 1st grade with this. And so how do we have these conversations? How do we utilize our voices to have a seat, have a representative with talking to the school board, even talking to even going to different parent meetings, and also thinking about the instructional curriculum that the kids are doing. Because from a conversation that I had last year with my son's first kindergarten teacher, she just didn't understand the reason why I was responding the way I was, and knowing that when you're talking about typical behavior, but because he is a young Black male, it's a behavioral problem now, and having a conversation of how that starts a label, and then she throwing up, oh, but I have Black family members, in the conversation. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about how do you understand culture and be able to speak that. And so I think for me, being able to create a language where we're understanding that and they understand that we are involved parents, and we need the access as well.
Excellent. Good point. There's, I know in the past, and I thought that get them to kindergarten, once they get to kindergarten, the learning starts. Starts at 0. 0 to 3. 0 to 3 is a whole educational piece, and then they have something that's called red shirting. Red shirting is when the kid is supposed to go to kindergarten, but they hold them back. So they can be at the top of the kindergarten class. Are you kidding me? So what happens a lot of times, if we don't know that, because when we had our first, nobody gave us a book and said, hey, you better get started right away. You told, hey, listen to some music and talk to the baby while they're in the womb and tell them some vocabulary words, and when they come out, it was, but it wasn't a point to where, this thing gets competitive from day one. And so what happens is that if in fact there was a 1st grade teacher I spoke with, and she was like, yeah, by kindergarten, by kindergarten, I can tell that student's gonna be a rock star now. And I'm like, there's no way on earth. How you gonna tell me at kindergarten, they just got shit up? Nope. If they can come in, if they can read, or if they can write, I know they're gonna be a rock star. And so let's say, for example, we didn't get the memo. And we didn't understand that we needed to do all these high-powered things because we want the kid to be a kid. You know, we don't want to snatch their childhood and put them straight to work. We want them to enjoy livelihood and have a good time. But not knowing by putting them in kindergarten and they're not proficient at their letters or writing or reading or wherever they're supposed to be. So now they're falling behind.
Mm-hmm.
And now the gap starts in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time they get to 3, because human nature, there's something that's called differentiating instruction. That means, just like all of us in the room learn differently at different levels. So if you had a teacher that was teaching all of us, if they said, okay, we're gonna do a book report, everybody reads the same book, we're gonna go over some notes, and I want you to write them down, and then we're gonna take a test at the end of the day. Write the notes down, and need you to, and I'm talking while I'm writing, and I need you to copy this down, and then after I'm done, I start talking. Now, some of us may not be done writing, or some of us can't write and listen and focus at the same time. And when it comes to reading this information, some of these words I can't recognize. But now, we take the test, I get my grade's low, and the teacher treats me like I'm supposed to know this. So I take 1 or 2. Now, I can advocate, and that's something we're going to have to do, is teach our kids to advocate for themselves. They can advocate for themselves, say, wait a minute now, I'm sorry, but you were going way too fast, I didn't get that information.
Mm-hmm.
And the information that you gave me in this book is, I haven't been exposed to this. And then it becomes a situation to where, or it can be, you know what, who needs a copy of the notes that I'm about to write? If you need a copy here, I'll take a copy here. I'm gonna give you the copy so you don't waste time trying to write this, because that's gonna take away from you listening to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And in reference to this book, okay, you may not be reading at this grade level, but it's not about the reading, it's about the information. I'm gonna teach you another way on some history without you having to read this book, because if you can't get through the vocabulary, you're not gonna understand the purpose of what we're trying to teach. Is it about what we're teaching, or is it about reading to get there? Is this a reading course, or is this a history course? And so the situations that we have to be able to advocate and say, wait a minute, are you trying to teach my son about World War I, or are you testing this reading level? Now, if he needs reading, help me figure out how I can get him the help he needs to be able to read this. But let's not take it all and throw it into one thing, because what happens, what you're going to do is you're going to inflate his ego, and his confidence is just going to be shot.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to do is we want to work for academic confidence. Academic confidence. I can go to any young man in my school and probably any high school and say, hey, I challenge you to a game of 21. They'd be like, let's go. And they don't know what skill set I have. They'd be, let's go. And pick and give me the ball first. But if I say, hey, let's do this book club. I don't want to do that. You know, and the piece is their superintendent that I used to work with, working on his doctorate. So there's one thing that our young men do not do in college together. What do you think that is?
Studies.
Study. They'll hang out, they'll date, they'll play sports, they'll do everything else, but they won't sit down and study together. And I like to call that a lack of academic confidence. Because when you're confident in something, you're going to go for it. If you're not, then you're not. And what happens is that as our kids go through the systems and they're not built up and they're not supported, and a lot of times. And there was a survey in our school with young men outside. Matter of fact, Michigan Department of Education came in, and we're kind of going through this, working with MDE, African American, MDE, Michigan Department of Education has this, it's called the African American Student Initiative. And what they're doing is they're training staff on cultural proficiency. What does that mean? That means when you teach something, you make sure everybody in the room can relate. And they're doing that. And so what happens is that we have myself and a few people from my district, they go to that. And that's what Michigan, so that's something we may want to talk and look at and say, hey, can we get some of our educators to go and be part of that so they can get that. And they're welcome. They say, hey, come bring them on. So that's something that we can kind of talk about. But it's a point to where we want to be able to support our kids and be able to identify what's not happening. And because a lot of times what happens is that sometimes we get intimidated with teachers and their education, and they're experts at it. So a lot of times when they start we kind of back off because, yeah, you're the expert. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You know, we're talking on at a different level. We're talking about some things that need to be done right. So, what else? Yes. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, man.
Well, personally, what brings me here is recent, extremely blatant racial attacks.
Okay.
There's some things that's been going on here at the high school. And it kind of, to make a long story short, resulted in teachers being, it's predominantly white staffed district. There are no people of color that represent our students in the classroom. There's parapros, there might be a counselor here, but there's no one in the front office.
You all right?
There's just nobody.
Excuse yourself.
Are you okay, baby?
Do I need to give you a hand?
Sorry about that, man. Go on.
Okay, we wanna make sure he okay.
Girl, he won't stop swallowing. Go ahead.
And so that's one of the things, because there's no allies, there's nowhere for them to go when they're under attack. And then in the classroom, what my daughter and some of her peers have experienced is lack of academic confidence of the teachers. And so we're teaching history, their history, but not our history. Their version of history, but not real history. And so now we're lying to them. And so my daughter, being the outspoken person that she is, she'll raise her hand and correct the teacher. And say, well, no, that's not really who Columbus was. Would you like to talk about that? Would you like to talk about the, Emmett Till and different things like that? And they'll just stop her right there. I'm uncomfortable with that. So that's inappropriate. And so she's immediately shut down. And she therefore has no academic confidence, and she's doing her research at home. She reads books, that's her thing. That's what she does. And so being shut down, now she doesn't want to hear anything you have to say because you're lying to her. She can't go to the office because then they're like, well, we want to make sure that the students that are extremely like you are very comfortable. So we're going to call them down here and see how they feel. We're going to make sure all the white folks are good. We're not going to check on you. We're not going to ask how this made you feel, even though your life might have been threatened or what have you. Nobody's really concerned about her academically. Nobody's concerned about her safety. Nobody's concerned. It's just not about her. So I'm here to find out what we can do about that, because what I'm hearing is, well, we can't get black teachers hired because there aren't any. We can't get any, there's all these excuses, okay? But at the end of the day, I have a 21-year-old. She graduated here, a few years back. Same thing. So I've had one go through, and I got one here. So I've got the T-shirt. This isn't my first rodeo, and nothing has changed. And I'm tired. And quite frankly, I'm very disappointed in the lack of concern for our black students. And I don't care if they're getting straight A's or straight D's. Where's the representation to say not only what they're doing, but why are they doing it? A lot of them just don't want to be bothered because they don't feel like they have any support. There's nobody walking around the halls that cares about them as a person. And until we connect with who they are, then we can't reach them. I mean, that's just what I'm saying is where I'm at as a parent.
Okay, I definitely appreciate that, and I've heard that. I've heard the we can't find any. There's no black teachers, no cookies anywhere. And we know better than that. We know better than that.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Brooks? Can we ask the students that we have here if that's true? I just asked my son. He said that she's pretty much on point, right? What? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty on point. As a person who likes history a lot, because I've been since my first children, my books when I was younger was about ancient Egypt and ancient black civilization. So when it comes to topics like that in world history, I'm like, okay, where is the African influence that all the other cultures had? They got it from somewhere. I was like, where'd they get it from? And then it came to the point, the teachers, it's like, they just don't include that in the curriculum. There's I would teach it, but they don't put it in there. And if I do, I'll get a call that it makes somebody uncomfortable, so we can't talk about that. So it is frustrating because I'm one of those people, yes, if I hear lies, I'll just shut everything out because it's
And I get the phone calls to prove that she is shutting everything out or speaking up in class.
right, or just leave class and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm disrespectful or just something like that and stuff like that. And it's like, no, I'm not, it is pretty rough, and I've been in Lakeview School District since kindergarten, and nothing has changed.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So
It's
ISS
the-
is the hangout.
Basically,
For our
and the
kids,
library.
I'm just saying.
And that's definitely a true.
Is that true?
fact, yeah.
If I can add something really quick. One thing to add on what she said about, like, I haven't heard the name George Washington Carver in like 4 years, right? I keep learning about slaves, how the white man treated slaves, stuff. I'm like, yes, I know what they did. I know that they took over the Native American land and stuff like that. I want to hear about something different now. I want to hear about the man who built the traffic lights, stuff like that. I want to hear about, like what she said, more African American influence. And when stuff like that doesn't apply to what actually happened, I just stop listening because I can't speak up. People be like, shut up, Kyle. Boy, stop being goofy. I'm like, dude, that's not right. And y'all know that's not right. Because a bunch of other black folks that agree with me, but they don't want to speak out in class because they're too embarrassed of having their opinion being shut down by somebody else. Or by the teacher. So.
That's why we appreciate y'all students that speak up.
I'm like the radical of my school, so I always speak up. So they just be like, oh, that's just Kyron. And teachers, I've heard them say that before. Oh, that's just Kyron. She's always like that. Yes, I am.
Or I'm gonna call your mama.
And that's what we call an we want students to advocate for themselves, and we'll talk about what that looks
Okay.
like and how that looks.
I just want to add this before I take off. Question is, why am I here? Being a former educator, like Ms. Evans, I had a daughter that graduated a few years back from here. Now I've got a granddaughter in this building, and I've got 2 other children in the district. Understanding what's happening as far as the dynamic, born and raised here, seeing how things have changed. I'm here because not only do I have a passion for kids, but I feel right now it's part of my purpose. And I want to be able to be, along with Mr. Evans, that male presence with this initiative to support the kids, the families, even the staff, to be able to help close that gap and do whatever's necessary. So I'm here for
Appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
I would say what Amanda said is what brought me here, but the reason I want to be a part of this network is a little different. I think for me, my perspective is that as African Americans, we progressively move in slave mentality. So traditionally, we divide. We don't come together and empower ourselves so we can make sure that one another are withheld so we don't miss out. When one person does make it, some of us are only worried about themselves. Some of us okay with just not knowing. They know that if we come together, there's power. And so for me, I'm here because I'm sick of being by myself. I need my people, flat out. I don't care if you got a scholar or somebody who in ISS every day. We gotta come together so all of our kids can make it because they love the fact that we don't stay connected. We don't know. That's how one person can know one thing and another person doesn't know it. That's how one person gets to know about a program and somebody else isn't aware of it. They don't want us to have a communication. They don't want us to have a connection because then there's power. And when there's power, it creates a necessary need for change. And they prefer for us to keep staying disconnected. So my child can graduate and then they still got people disconnected and then we just stay like that and nobody's forced to change and I'm just tired. So
We definitely appreciate you here. You know, and as you mentioned that it's tough for us to come together. But and you know, when you look at other cultures, they'll come together and they'll have a mini school or they have a building or what. But if you really look at it, other cultures came here by choice. We're the only race of people who was forced to come here.
Right.
And because of how that happened, we have been divided ever since.
Yes.
And
that's right.
and so what happens is that once we know what we've been dealing with, we have to make sure that we purposely reverse that. And it's not going to be easy because when there's tension, when there's stress, it brings us together. But when things subside and calm down, it's like the water's receding. Everybody kind of go back until something happens and then it riles up.
Right.
And what type of message does that send to the people that we're trying to affect?
Right.
It's like, you know, don't cause any waves, then you won't see them.
Yep.
And so what we have to do is we have to understand is that if our purpose is to put out fires, then that's what we do. But if our purpose is to close the achievement gap, then we're in for the long haul. And so what we talk about is how do we close the achievement gap? So things that get in the way of education, we help fix. And so if it has nothing to do with education, this is our focus. And so as long as we stay down that road, we'll be fine. Now, one thing I want us to be very, very conscious of is that if in fact the leadership is not on board, it's going to be tough for any program to get going. And in this particular situation, I'm here to tell you that the head leader, the superintendent, is on board.
Mm-hmm.
He the one that called me.
Yep.
He said, hey, I remember you from over here. We met a while back. I need you to come over here. It's like, okay, we're on the way. And so when you have that type of support, and I can tell you at the program at first superintendent we had it, but you can tell he was kind of, he would come to the meetings and kind of and support, but not heavily support. Superintendent now, Dr. Nerat, he's in it. He'll come and he'll take the heat.
Yes.
And come back with some responses and help make some changes and put some new positions in place and do some things. Superintendent that I'm working with now, Dr. Swartz, he's like, hey, can you help get this? I've been there 3 years. It's the first year. Say, can you help get this parent group going? I was like, absolutely. Let's get it going. And so it took about a year and a half for me to turn it over because I'm doing the agenda and running the meetings, and it's like, okay, we got to get this thing going and then turn it off. And what we were able to do, we were able to have Black History Month. Now, Black History Month on day one opened up with a taste fest. So what we did, everybody got their own little dish, right? You brought your dish in, and the dish was, and we put in the little cups and labeled it and had it laid out. And who was it for? Everybody. Every student got a chance to taste what soul food really tastes like. Teachers came running like, hey, this is good. Other students, I've never tasted that. So they got a chance to taste that. Then every day we had, at lunchtime, outside the lunchroom, we played music. It was our music. It could have been old school, new school. And so we did that. So that was kind of that culture piece. And the students liked it. They was like, oh, okay, a little music. And we always had over the announcements, we always had a fact about a influential African-American person. We had movie night. We showed Hidden Figures. Yeah. So it was just, hey, you got a cafeteria here. I mean, not a cafeteria, you have an auditorium. Pretty sure they got a screen. There you go. And so we had that come out, and a lot of conflicts with sports and things like we did that. We also did Career Day, African American Career Day, right outside. So we did it in the hallway, like that hallway that I came in. We didn't put, because I noticed that when we did Career Day, like in the gym or other place, you had to go there. So what we did is had it right down the hall of the lunchroom. So all three lunches can be involved. They can go by and look and say, how many times have our kids, much less other cultures, seen all Black professionals all
there you go.
Down and go talk to them.
See?
And so that sent the message. So and then we had an assembly. In assembly, the girls did a step routine and did awesome. And so what we did, and I'm kind of digress a little bit. 2 years ago, we were working with Renaissance High School. Renaissance High School is an influential high school in Detroit. And so we kind of doing some exchange, because our teachers were saying, some of our white teachers were saying, how come they operate at such a high level? So we kind of went over there and seen that the kids, that have certain grade point average, but they were on fire to, hey, I'm taking it to the next level. I want to get there. So they were on fire to do that. So they invited us. So we took a group of boys over there, and then they said, well, hey, we're going to have a mentoring piece tomorrow. Can you bring the girls? We got like 98 girls. We can't bring them. So we invited them over. So it was an organization called Pretty Brown Girls. And Pretty Brown Girls is an organization. Well, this young lady woman came out, gave a presentation. What it was some mothers that were at the mall with their daughters. They said, go pick out some dolls. We just kind of doing the mom girl thing. And girls came back with white dolls. I was like, why are you wearing white dolls? Why don't you get a black doll? It's like, white dolls are pretty. Black dolls are not pretty. It was like, whoa, time out, screech and halt. And so that mom and the girlfriend put together this mentoring organization called Pretty Brown Girls. And what happens is that, so what we did is we got all just Black girls in that auditorium with this one person speaking. and she went through it, and you talk about on fire. This is the first time that they had ever been in one spot in this environment by themselves, and they were so encouraged and so excited. So afterwards, we said, okay, well, how can we get this going? And it was like the program was like $50 per person. It was like, we can't do that, but we got to keep this going. So we had one African American female in the building, and me and her connected, and we're gonna keep this going. And it's been going on for about 2 years. And those young ladies, and you talking about running the place, young ladies run the place. And so, meet every other Thursday. Girl issues, we have principles, health, character, scholarship. And what happens is that come into this safe place and talk about issues and what we need to do to move forward, so you're not by yourself. So what they did is they put together this step show, right? And they ran it. It was about 25 girls. Last year they did it. It was first we had what was called a diversity assembly. Diversity assembly was in February. You know how well that went over, right? People were hot. Why are we having a diversity assembly in February? February is Black History Month. We need to have because of leadership, the principal, and it's like, hey, we're gonna switch. We're gonna push that back. So they did an assembly during diversity and did a great job. I mean, they practiced every day after school for about a month. The adult supervision was, somebody over here doing their work, and they did it. There was no arguing, there were no fussing, there was no issues, and they performed. This year when we did it, when diversity was moved back and it was Black History Month, they did a hip hop piece, had about 35 girls in it. They did a step part, had about 35 girls. Some transferred over, but you talk about blowing the place away. People were in awe because we know stepping is precision and everything's got to be right, and it was like it was great. And so at the end of that month, you're talking about people riding high with confidence, and then it gave everyone else a new perspective on who we are and what we're about. And so, number one factor of a student being successful is parent expectations. Number two is some type of mentoring. So I encourage that we look at some type of mentoring going on with our young ladies in the building and with our young men. We just got the guys going with mentoring, and we bring fathers in as guest speakers come in, just talk on a topic. It's because what happens is that gives our students, for example, like this is our group, this gives the students an opportunity to have that space. And so that's one thing we can move forward with that.
Can I interject real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're getting close to about 8:30.
Okay.
And it's wonderful what you're saying. So I wanted to kind of open up the floor, not to step on your toes, sir, but in case, make this more engaging, because we may not get him again for another few months. And so I really need to pull out of you guys what we could ask him so we can get going. Do you know what I mean? We've already had this conversation. I know what to do, but I want you to know what he's envisioning for us to do, because what he's doing is successful in Avondale, correct, sir? So we need to have these conversations, because I don't want to go away and be like, well, I should have asked that, or maybe I'm uncomfortable. We got the playing field right here. Let's do it. Blake is like, go for it. I will support you. Let's do it. Put the money where the mouth is, right?
So that's what I was thinking, because I have to get ready and go. But and I think from the perspective of, I feel like all of those things are great that you're mentioning, but I think the part that as a parent that I'm concerned about is how do we start holding people responsible for the care of our children? Because I think that having our girls get mentoring or whatever, or that, and coming together is a great form of community. But if my child is in a room and she's not getting access, the teacher is biased in and that, she says one thing and she's being sent to the office, or in the narratives that everybody is saying here from elementary down to the high school